get this fucking dog an Oscar.
In 2012, filmmaker Ben Leonberg rewatched Poltergeist and noticed something familiar in all these haunted house stories. The dog is always the first to sense when something's wrong. That observation became the seed for his feature directorial debut, a supernatural story told almost entirely from a dog's point of view. The film follows a loyal dog who moves with his owner to a rural home and quickly realizes they aren't alone. As an unseen presence grows closer, the dog becomes the only real defense his human has. The lead is played by Indy, a Nova Scotia duck-tolling retriever owned by Leonberg and producer Carrie Fisher. Indy had no formal training, no double, and he appears in every scene, which meant production stretched across more than 400 shooting days over 3 years inside a New Jersey home. They leveraged a roughly $70,000 budget, low-angle camera work, and carefully built sequences to keep the 73-minute film grounded in Indy's perspective. And the end result was a film critics have hailed as one of the most heartbreaking horror films of 2025. This week, we're talking about Good Boy. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash. If you're joining us again, welcome back. You can't just go wherever the hell you want anymore. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the party. We are a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a movie is a hack,
A total joke, a waste of time,
or a slash.
Totally killer, pun intended.
We believe horror is for everyone, and as such, we're rating these movies with the perspective we've gained from our varying walks of life and the flavors of fear we fancy most. My name is Chris. I'm your friendly neighborhood slasher enthusiast. This week, I'm joined by the Superfly space guy, Mac.
Mankind has left the caves, but the darkness haunts us still.
The classic horror connoisseur, Sean.
It's not really safe when it's wet.
And the paranormal paramour, Binks.
Come on, scaredy pants.
You're tuning in for Good Boy, but if you support the show, you'll also get to hear our B-side at the end of this episode where we get into all the iconic dogs in horror.
Undoubtedly one of the best topics that you can discuss when it comes to horror movies, but for now, who's seen this one before?
I gotta admit, I avoided this very deliberately. And recently I asked friend of the show, Alan, to spoil it like just a little bit so I could feel safer diving in to watch this. So this is my first time ever actually braving it.
That's a wise choice on your behalf. I was really looking forward to this movie last year. So when it hit theaters, I was running at the chance to see it. So I had seen it before, rewatched it again for this recording.
Yeah, I had not seen this before. This is definitely a first-time watch for me. I honestly think, similar to Mac, I held off as long as I could because I just knew that this was not going to go well.
You knew that it wasn't going to go well? That is deeply concerning to me, Sean. I watched this finally in theaters, but I'm not going to lie. I was nervous as hell going into this, specifically because when you're confronted with the idea of a movie starring a dog and it's a horror movie, you got to think, well, shit, does the dog die? And that is the biggest question on all of our minds. And we are not going to spoil it for you folks. But what I will say is you're going to be feeling so much in this movie. But for those of you who hadn't seen it, what is it that you walked in expecting?
I'm very curious about both of your perspectives because I was under the impression that maybe all of us saw this already and so we were rewatching it, or maybe one of us did the watch party that we did for our Discord members, because I think, Chris, you captured it so perfectly, right? Like, you already go into it expecting, is this going to be a disaster or is this going to be different than what I'm expecting, considering the fact that it's starring a dog and a horror film? Those combinations of things are very sketchy. I mean, we have the animal report for a reason, right? So I definitely want to hear both of your perspectives on what you're expecting, because for me personally, I was just hoping and praying the whole time. I heard so many great things about the movie, but I had no other expectations other than, oh my God, please, Lord, let me not report something terrible back when we eventually record this, you know?
Yeah, I think I wasn't sure how this was going to go, especially considering it's like from the point of view of a dog. Are we going to get hardcore Henry, but it's spooky and dog-centered? Is this going to be more like Evil Dead with a canine Ash? I really was not sure kind of what this was going to do in terms of a film, in terms of a story. And I tried my best, again, to avoid really kind of any information. I got just enough from a friend to feel a little bit better into watching it, but I didn't get enough to know like what was going to happen on screen, what was going to happen with the story. But I was worried. I was sweating it because, again, there's a dog and he's the main character.
Yeah, 100%. I held off for as long as I could because I knew, like, as soon as I heard about this movie, I just had the feeling that it was going to be hard to watch. You know what I mean? Like, it's from the dog's perspective. It's just going to be fucked up. Like, I can see shit happen to humans all day long, but I don't have it in me to be watching dogs be tortured and terrorized. And so I just knew that the premise was going to be fucked up and it was going to fuck with you. I just didn't know to what extent. And to your point, Mac, you had to ask a friend for some kind of, I don't know, like comfort into making sure that this is going to be like not that hard to watch. Who knows? But I wonder, it makes me wonder how many people literally just searched, does the dog die in this movie once this movie came out? I'm sure it's like millions.
But Sean, genuinely, as soon as the trailer dropped and people learned about this movie, there was a spike in the searching of that question specifically.
Sure. I'm sure there was because everyone wants to know. And I bet you, we're not going to spoil anything here, but positive outcome, people are going to be like, cool, let's watch it. Negative outcome, people, I bet you drop viewers, man. I bet you just drop viewers.
It's for sure tough. Man, you're talking about the way that you walked into this knowing that it's going to be fucked up. Sean, it's because this movie does such a great job preying on your projection and your experience with animals onto everything that you see in this movie. And what's absolutely fascinating, if you got to see this in theaters, there was a featurette at the end of the movie where they show how the movie was made, and it was hysterical. It was cutting between very serious moments and really silly, goofy behind the scenes moments where the director and his wife are really just there, like making the goofiest sounds, trying to get Indy's attention. And Indy has no concept that he's in a movie. So it's such a neutral palette and a place to start from. But because it's preying on your own experience and setting you up so well, this movie actually oozes sentimentality. Next to Sinners and then Welcome to Derry, this is the piece of horror media in 2025 where I felt the most. I just think about like how much soul you can see in this dog's eyes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It truly is crazy. If you love animals, or even if you're a dog owner yourself, this movie is going to be emotionally devastating, to say the least, for sure. And it's so funny that you talk about the behind the scenes and like how it was filmed, because I'm sure, you know, if you're just making funny sounds to get reactions, to get those scenes, like that's just hilarious to think about, because the feeling you get while watching this is completely the opposite. And the movie almost entirely told through the dog's eyes, really centering on his devotion to his owner. There's just this deep feeling of sadness and empathy for Indy, the dog, in this movie. But I feel like this movie also does a really good job at creating this persistent sense of tension and nervousness, the atmosphere, the score. They really put in a lot of work to add to these heightened senses, for sure. Like, it's just, you're just getting all of these feelings. You're almost like, for what's happening, and it's not like you're getting a whole lot of action in this movie, but you're getting a lot of like on the edge of your seat, just trying to see what's happening, what you're going to see, if you're going to see it.
Keeps you on edge pretty much the entire film, I think. So yeah, you're absolutely right there. And it's interesting because in the past you could have a similar effect by focusing on children, except we've overdone that to the point where now we had a theme for a good long time with Sean, which was quite the opposite. We didn't care. And so here you have this pure innocence once again, and it's something that most humans either do or should kind of have this like innate thing with dogs and cats and other pets where we just love and care about them and have pure empathy for them, and we don't want to see anything bad happen to them. And so the entire time you're watching, you're like, please don't do it. Not this scene, not the next scene, not any scene. Don't do anything bad to this dog. If anything creepy shows up, we look at it and we can handle it on the screen. That's not even a problem. But the second the dog is in the frame, you're just on the edge of your seat because you're like, you absolutely cannot. That's illegal, straight to jail. And it's really, really effective. And in terms of feelings, there are other feelings that you're going to feel while watching this. I think, you know, you've mentioned some sadness, but there's other stuff going on here where you can identify with other characters in the film. You can identify with the dog in the film. And so I think by the end of it, you're left waiting to give your own pup a good little pet.
Most definitely. It's crazy to think that a movie like this is one that's A, even made, but B, that can evoke such strong emotions out of anyone. Because yes, although all four of us, we're all dog owners and pet owners in general, this is going to touch some heartstrings that are very particular and personal to us. I would argue that what this movie also does is something that just translates no matter what, whether you're a pet owner or not, or a dog lover, right? There's a couple themes and situations that occur in this film that can make you a little emotional, that makes you just a bit more tender and vulnerable. And there's this like ominous shroud that surrounds this whole film. It's very deeply unsettling. It's very dark. It makes you scared for what's to come. You feel very vulnerable, much like this dog, this main character. And I just wasn't expecting that, and I couldn't escape that feeling no matter what. And to do that through a dog's perspective, to me, I thought was very unique. And honestly, it just surprised me that this film works regardless of it being from a dog. It's slow, it's patient, it's curious. And I think that it's really a feat for the filmmakers, because you would never freaking know that this dog was not trained, okay? It's incredible. When that was revealed during the featurette, specifically after the theater showing, I was sobbing, let's be clear. But through the tears, I was enjoying this featurette, and God, I sure as hell needed the levity, because it's really cool to see how this movie that is dark, mostly, was made in a way that's really light and fun. And as patient as the movie is, the filmmakers had to be 3 times as patient, because the dog's not even trained? What do you even mean? It's incredible.
Yeah, this is exactly why I love independent filmmaking so much. It's being able to take a vision and be relentless in the pursuit of just executing it and bringing it together, no matter how long it takes, no matter how many takes it gets, no matter how many hours Indy can work before he needs a break and gets distracted for the day. I absolutely was blown away by how well executed this movie was, because when I first heard this is a movie from the dog's POV, I thought it was going to be a la Presence. So I thought we were going to see the dog sometimes, but then switch the camera's perspective to be from the dog's perspective. I didn't expect it would get so much face time with Indy. One of the biggest things that surprised me, even in addition to that, is just how much it evokes emotionally from us. And there's a couple things that I can pinpoint as the worst part of this movie. And almost only one of them is a technical thing that I wish was a little bit different. But the rest of it, it's not because it's a bad thing, but rather you can think back to, oh, these are the moments in my life where I've definitely like shouted at my dog, and I regret doing that because I was just overstimulated and frustrated in the moment. No. We all do that as dog owners at some point. It's like, whoa, chill, don't jump on me.
Yeah.
This movie's ability to tap into something that is so guarded for us as people. We all give a shit if the dog dies. And I can't believe it took this long to capitalize on this idea.
It's very true. You definitely get that feeling throughout this movie, just that feeling of, oh yeah, that time that I've yelled at my dog or been like aggravated just because I needed like some kind of personal space for a moment. And then you feel bad about it because now you're seeing like this perspective and you're like, oh man, they just want love, you know? It's not the emotional depth that this movie has that surprised me and how that went beyond horror, because I feel like I knew it was going to turn out that way in some aspect. What surprised me was, to what you said, Chris, that perspective, the POV shots that we get. It's just the unique approach that it took. I think it was just really well done. The intentional camera shots, the angles were perfect. That was really great. But another thing that I think surprised me a lot, and I only remember watching the trailer for this movie, I think only twice. And what I got from the trailer was, for some reason, thinking that we were going to get some traditional type of slasher home invader movie and the dog was going to be just involved in it and it was just going to be watching its owner get attacked or something like that. I was just expecting something completely different than what this story gave us.
It's interesting because I'm so reversed from you here. Like, I was so focused on the conceit of the film being it's from the dog's point of view. And so I was expecting maybe something family friendly, but maybe something not. But it's going to be from a dog's point of view. And so it's going to play out like other horror films would. We're just going to be from 2-3 feet up. That's kind of where I thought this was going. And so when we get to the emotional impact of this, that caught me off guard. And I think there's probably some folks who like have to watch the whole thing and go online and search, what does this film mean? What happened in these scenes? I think I made it like a third of the way into the film and I was like, oh, I get it. It doesn't feel good at all. I know what's going on and I understand the significance and I don't like it. But that caught me off guard. I was not expecting this film to go deep. Its waters run very deep here. And it's not like way off the deep end, right? It's not like you have to look it up on some Wikipedia to figure out what it means. It's just that like emotionally, there's some depth here that makes you remember, that a dog is part of your life, but you're the dog's entire life. And so to get from this point of view, it smacks you in the face. And that definitely did catch me off guard and then stuck with me the remaining 2/3 of the film.
But I think that emotion that it does, it's exactly what sticks in the face that feels like it raises the stakes in this movie, because the more you care, the more that you're invested in Indy and Todd and Vera, the more that you're hooked in, the more you're panicking the entire time, wondering how this shit is going to go down. And the scariest thing about this movie is worrying whether Indy's going to be okay. This is standard fare supernatural horror. If you've seen one, you've seen them all, but you haven't seen it from exactly this perspective. And that makes it a completely different ball game. So is what you see in this movie scary? Absolutely not. But the panic and the anxiety that you feel, that is terrifying, especially because I don't want to imagine my own dog in this situation.
I agree with that. I think you do have that feeling. I feel the movie does build some pretty decent scares. There's like a couple right in the middle to the third act of the film there where you really get that horror vibe, but it's not overall a really scary film. It builds a lot of tension and anxiety. Like I said before, there's always that feeling that something is lurking, but you don't always get to see it, which adds to the anxiety of it all. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that this movie is able to build upon.
That's interesting that you both bring that up, because I think for me, I can't help but wonder, am I maybe just projecting that anxiety and that fear that I have for Indy onto like everything else that happens in the film? Because both times that I've watched this, I found it to be pretty scary. I think it depends also like where I watched it, right? The second time around, I had to watch it on my computer screen, because if not, Cullen would be literally barking every 3 seconds. So it had to be done. In a dark theater, it definitely terrified me. But again, I think it was maybe a combination of like me really just opening up, being vulnerable and raw and terrified for what's going to happen to this dog and just the scenario that it finds itself in, and really just trying to put together what's actually happening. There's a lot of moments where you're not too sure what it is that you're seeing, and that does remind me of Skinamarink in some ways, for sure. It plays on this idea of like shadows and noises, and I think anyone that owns a pet, or honestly, even if you have a parent or you have a very young sibling, this idea of kids and animals just staring at things and you're just not quite sure what the hell they're watching or reacting to, that stuff can creep you out. At the very least, it's happened to you once in life. I think this movie plays and really leans into that moment that I found both times that I watched this to be like deeply unsettling and a little creepy for sure.
Maybe we need the Good Boy Skinamarink double feature,
I think so.
Okay, this movie is exactly what Skinamarink wishes it was.
I don't know. Maybe you got some inspiration.
Oh my gosh, Skinamarink. Look, as someone with visual snow syndrome, just turn the lights off. You're living Skinamarink immediately. Just saying, it's fun. But this film almost felt like Skinamarink in a couple scenes. I think you're absolutely right there. But unlike Skinamarink, it did have tension. And so, sorry, Sean, as we're going through the film and you start to kind of pick up what's going on, who's here, who's there, what is there to actually be scared of in this house, right? Like what are the things at play here? And we start to interact with the dog and these things more and more often. The tension is there. It's absolutely there. And it's from directions that you don't immediately anticipate at the beginning of the film. And so, yeah, it does give you anxiety. I think this is absolutely an anxiety inducing film. It's not like fear as in you're so worried for your own life. It's not in the traditional sense of like jump scares or anything like that, but it is absolutely an anxiety you have the entire time that just doesn't go away. And it is one of those things that sticks with you afterwards as well. I think it's maybe on purpose, but yeah, it absolutely just like weighs on your head, that like that feeling that I should be doing something differently after having seen this. And I think that speaks to just how excellent the filmmakers are at how they made this film, because before this, nobody dared. And honestly, I think after this, nobody else should. I think this is how you do it. And I think if you're going to go off and try to do this, but shake it up and subvert expectations, don't. Just watch this again and suck up the fact that you can't do it. That's really what needs to happen. I think it's a one and done. The film was made. We don't need more, because somebody's going to mess it up.
I can appreciate that it did the damn thing, though. The more I think about this, the more that if you take Indy out of this situation, this is a pretty mediocre supernatural movie. It's pretty, don't get me wrong. But if you don't have Indy to ground yourself with for this POV, it's another story. And that's okay to say, because the focus of this is the relationship between dog and owner, man and his best friend. Mm-hmm. That is the whole point of this movie. What's incredible to me is that it's able to take that and actually take a haunted house movie and make it fun, scary, intimidating, anxiety-inducing. But how many times have I said on this show, if I have one more fucking horror movie or a dad, in this case a dog dad, moves his family into a haunted house and jeopardizes everyone's safety because of some dumb bullshit, I'm done. That's exactly what this movie is, except it's actually interesting.
Well, you're probably going to get a whole lot more of those scenarios, so, don't hold your breath. But
it is what it is. It's just every movie is a regurgitation of another movie.
Yeah.
And I get that. But thank God these folks decided to take what is old and done and familiar and breathe new life into it.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what it is. I think everything about this movie, from that unique point of view, from the dog's perspective, and also agree, like, if this was just through the eyes of the dog, it still may not have worked as well as it does when we're actually getting the shots of Indy reacting throughout the film. If it was just through the eyes, it may not have been as effective, but the wonderful, like, cinematography point of view shots, the inventive use of that cinematography, the sound design in this movie, I think it all made for one of the more original films in both concept and execution that I've seen in a long time.
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I just think of this film and think, dude, have we ever gotten a movie like this specifically? Like a horror movie from a dog's POV completely, to the point where you don't even see the faces of humans, right? Like we're really, so that you don't get distracted from the fact that this dog is the main character. I find that to be really cool and unique. And again, going back to this idea that indie project, husband and wife and a couple of friends get together and make this movie over the span of 3 years. Incredible stuff, using their own dog, which adds just an incredibly impactful layer, because what happens in this movie, you also are then thinking in your head, especially on a second watch, you're thinking, this is this guy's actual dog. It just raises the emotional stakes even higher. And I find that translates even down to the ending. This ending absolutely destroys me. Like, I can't even talk about it too much, because then I'll start crying again. So I'm surprised I'm even talking about this movie to begin with, because this is one of those movies where, like, I talk about it too much and I'm like right on the cusp. It's just incredible. I think it's talking about some things and the way that it personifies this idea of something that we can't reveal because, spoiler, but it just personifies it in a very scary, deeply emotional and effective way. And I want to reiterate, it doesn't mean that you have to be a pet owner to get it. I think that if you've ever loved anything, then you can relate to the emotion that this ending in particular evokes, for sure. It's equally tragic and beautiful, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, this is such a good example of showing versus telling in cinema. I think, even going from the very first scene of the movie all the way to the last, if you are an attentive viewer, you are given enough information to have seen a story like completely in its entirety. I think it even keeps the tension going right up until like the very end of the film, but not with screen cool tricks, flash, whatever. It's it's implications. It's things that make you think, but what if? And so that whole thing is just sitting in your brain, frying a little bit, making you feel tense, making you feel anxious until the very end. And I don't want to spoil it. I know there's people out there who probably want it spoiled, but no, I think up until the very end, it is just making you sweat a good bit, but not by having to put it into your face. It just has to put it into your brain. And it's so good at that.
Yeah, the ending for this movie is probably one of the most heartbreaking things about this movie. It's where the story begins to unravel itself. That slow creeping reality of what's happening kicks in, and I think it just punches you right in the gut. And yeah, maybe you don't need to be a dog owner to really feel what's happening here, but if you are, I feel like you're going to feel it a whole lot more.
You know, it's so tough for me to discuss this ending. So all I'm going to say is it was an effective ending, and I'm not mad at how it ended. I'm not. And we can talk about it more, because what I really want to say would absolutely destroy your ability to go into this movie without it being ruined. I can't wait. We're going to discuss it. This movie has an ending that feels like a great period at the end of the sentence. No notes. I don't need anything else. And I can't wait to see how that impacts everyone's ratings. But before we actually get to scoring this film, Sean, how would you rate the gore score?
The gore in this movie is pretty tame. It really is very tame. It's not trying to be a gore fest. It's not trying to ramp up a kill count. It has some moments of blood, but overall, this one trades splatter for atmosphere, and I think it's earning itself a low gore score.
Good luck, Binks. How does one navigate the animal report in such a movie as Good Boy without spoiling it?
Listen, this is arguably the most important animal report that I'll probably ever give on this show. And I've been racking my head trying to think of how to give it, because there's no real way to say this without spoiling. So I'm going to say that just prepare your heart, because it is deeply emotional. But luckily, if this is any solace, I would say it's not brutal or violent or anything that you see head on, but we're just going to have to leave it at that. I know it's not really a full animal report, but this time, listeners, you're just going to have to forgive me, because I can't actually give this animal report in detail.
You know, I feel like Cujo was an easier animal report than this was, but let's go ahead and get into our ratings. Good Boy from 2025. Was it a hack or a slash?
I'm just going to say again, I avoided this film, and it took a lot to actually watch it. I did think about it for a minute, where this is one of those where I was like, maybe I just don't need to be on this episode, simply because I don't know if I can actually make it into the film. I'm glad I did, though. Okay. And there's a lot in the story, the stuff that we can't spoil, that I can relate to personally in my life and family members' lives, that like it really hits hard for me in a lot of different ways. And so there's a lot of emotion, I think, that you can get from watching this. It is super effective in that. Set that aside and just look at the movie itself. It's a beautiful film, as Chris mentioned earlier. They did a lot of great work in the cinematography and the lighting and all sorts of stuff that we're going to talk about later. But like as a film goes, it's good. If it wasn't centered on the dog, you know, if it was just about some other stuff in the movie and it was all from a human perspective, it might be a little boring, you know, even though it was just as deep. But I think the fact that it is from this dog's point of view is massive. It is a club to the back of the head when watching it. The anxiety that you feel is incredibly effective. It is tension escalated. You know, we really just amped it up a bit. And by the time you make it to the film's end, you really have earned kind of something big. And the payoff here, is there payoff? I don't even know if you can describe it as such, you know? I really don't think it is. I think by the end, though, you're ready. You know, you're ready to move on, because it's been such a ride. You need a break. You need to just be able to sit there and deal with it. And I don't think I've had a film just kind of hit me like that in a long time. And so I think how effective it was at all of that, how beautiful it was to look at, and how amazing our canine actor was. This is an absolute slash.
Yeah, for sure. I think Good Boy is one of those horror films that sneaks up on you emotionally while barely raising its voice. It's such a subtle film, but it just hits you hard. I think we said it before. It's told entirely from the dog's perspective. It takes this familiar haunted house setup and filters it through loyalty, confusion, and this quiet dread. And the result is a movie that is far more unsettling than it is gory. And it trades jump scares for this mounting anxiety. And I think what really works is how attached you become to Indy. Seeing the world at his level, these half-seen figures, these ominous sounds, moments that he understands but can't explain. And I think it creates this persistent sense of helplessness that's really just genuinely effective. It just gets you. And it's an impressively original experience where the emotional weight lands way harder than expected. It's a really well executed movie that just isn't a comfort watch. It's just a really, I was talking to somebody earlier today about this, and I was like, I would highly recommend watching this, where I wouldn't highly recommend watching the movie, but I acknowledge that it's a really well done film. You know what I mean? And it's slow, it's moody, it's quietly devastating in a way that really sticks with you. I admire it. I respect what it's doing, but it's just something that I would not look forward to watching again just from the emotional weight of the film. This one, it sits, it stays, and it devastates. And this one is a barking slash. It is a barking slash, but it's fucking hard.
Look, I couldn't agree more with the both of you. I feel like what I've shared already is kind of revealing as far as my scoring goes. This movie is one that I think I will always remember. I was very surprised by my reaction to this movie. Definitely surprised the second time around. I didn't think that I would be sobbing to the point where I needed to compose myself before even getting on this recording. And I'm not being dramatic. I think that there's a particular theme here that it isn't so much the loyalty of a dog and such and that pet ownership. It's something else that we can't reveal just yet, but something that you think about often if you've ever been in this situation before. And I wasn't expecting this movie to get into that. It hits harder than you'd ever expect. And it's 73 minutes, and thank God for it, because any more than that, it would be devastation on my soul. I think that it's really quick and a good watch in terms of production value and this tension and this curiosity and fear and anxiety that you just can't get free from until the very, very end. The atmosphere is super effective in that regard. But I'm just really surprised by the after effects of this movie. You know, like what you're left with. The appreciation for maybe it's your pet or maybe it's for your kid or your friends or just in general, that sense of loyalty and the connections that you have with people. It changes, I guess. At least that was my takeaway from watching this both times. And that's something that I did not expect coming from a small indie film, you know, that I felt like didn't even have a long enough runtime in the theaters. This movie's certainly not talked about enough. I would sing this movie's praises from the rooftops if I could. So I would definitely recommend it for anyone that's willing to take the chance and really just wants to cry it out, maybe. That could be a good choice for sure. Because I agree with you, Sean. It's a tough one to recommend because it's certainly a tough one to rewatch. I can tell you that. But I'm really impressed by this movie, both from what its execution did, but also from what it took to make this movie. And obviously, I'm a paranormal paramour, right? I love this stuff. I love supernatural. It's got that sense of ghost stories, possession, presence of unseen forces, and this classic trope of not really sure what your pets are sensing. And all of that is so great. And sure, maybe not original, but this POV from a dog, it's something else. And I think that they did a really good job with it. So most definitely, I'm giving this an intense slash for sure.
This movie is quite genuinely a sight to behold. I mentioned earlier that it preys on the experiences and the fears and the anxieties that we have as we look back on relationships with pets and animals in the past. But even with that, even in the absence of that in your personal experience, even if you just look at what's in the background of this film, it's a tough pill to swallow. And I can admire that. I can admire the simplicity of the foundation of this story, knowing that just about everything you get is what you're imagining is happening on the screen. What you're imagining is going through the minds of some of the characters that you see. This is a film about loyalty. This is a film about perseverance. the cold grip of death and what it means to navigate something you are not equipped to fully understand. And that doesn't just go for Indy, that also goes for the human characters in this movie. This is a movie that perfectly captures my dog is staring and barking at nothing. What the fuck is up with that? But also makes it deeply emotional and deeply personal. I have watched this movie now about 4 times, and it hurts every time, but this is one of those that I absolutely need everybody to watch. And if you know, you know. If you're looking at me and we're squinting our eyes at each other and you're wondering, Chris, is this safe to watch? I'm going to say, fuck off, I'm not telling you, but I am telling you to watch the movie anyway. This is a slash. And with that, Good Boy from 2025 has earned a Universal Slash. Now, you can find this movie streaming online. You can check the link in our show notes to see where you can find it right now. Give it a watch, then join us in the second half so we can be more specific about that ending. We'll see you in a bit.
Ever worry you won't know where you're going when the lights finally go out? Feeling lost at the end of the tunnel? Don't worry. Afterlife Paws trains elite service dogs to escort you into the afterlife. That's right. When your time finally comes, our dogs don't fetch sticks, they fetch souls. Here at Afterlife Paws, our dogs are trained to sit, stay, and stare directly into the void until you follow them. No questions, no hesitation, just pure, unconditional guidance to whatever's waiting for you on the other side. There's no leash required here, no escape needed. Once they choose you, you're their forever soul. At Afterlife Paws, we believe loyalty shouldn't end at death, and our dogs are here to take you through the gates of heaven or the depths of hell. They'll even hang back and haunt your old house if you want to. Afterlife Paws is not responsible for hesitation, screaming, sudden acceptance, existential clarity, loss of free will, leash burns, phantom tugging, misplaced souls, incorrect afterlife placement, tail-induced emotional comfort, or your dog chasing after that pesky little ghost squirrel. Afterlife Paws, because when the end comes, you don't want a Grim Reaper, you want a good boy.
Welcome back, folks. You're now entering the spoiler zone for Good Boy, which has earned a Universal Slash. That's just how good he was. We have a lot to unpack here, but before we get into the specifics of our ratings, Sean, let's go through those kills.
Well, finally, we're here, because if you've already seen the movie or you just got done watching the movie and you're joining us in this second half, we can finally let it out. Indy doesn't die. Thank the fucking Lord. Indy didn't die, folks. The dog did not die, but we really only have 3 kills in this movie. You have Todd, his grandfather, his grandfather's dog, maybe some of the various family members that were buried on his family graveyard, but we're not going to get into all that. We're just going to get into the 3. So regardless, the weight of these kills are heavy, and I got to know what you all thought about them.
The death of Todd's relationship with his sister. No, I'm kidding. Bandit.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. You poor boy. You poor boy. You poor boy, Bandit. That was so sad.
Yes.
That's my thing with the animal report, because it's like, yeah, Indy doesn't die, but another dog does. And it makes me want to throw up. So,
yeah.
Jesus.
So this is something that I asked Alan to spoil for me. I was like, all right, does Indy die? Does the main dog die? And he was like, no, but there are other things with animals. And so I was sitting here thinking, oh, there's going to be like mass abuse or something.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what I was expecting. And so when we start out and we mentioned that the grandfather's kind of a little bit off and he had a dog, I was like, crap, the grandfather is going to be a ghost and he abuses animals and it's going to be miserable. And I spent the first third of the film just waiting for something horrible to happen there. And then, eventually you realize that's not the case. And you realize that whatever the grandfather suffered from, the grandson suffered from. And then you're like, oh, so the dog was just trapped and nobody was there to let him out. That is horrific. That is so miserable. And the grandfather and Todd, like them going out, it's a real crap way to go. Okay. So that's not fun to see him go through that. But what's worse is to imagine that poor pup just waiting his turn. Like, all right, let me out. Miserable.
is tough.
How does one literally talk about this movie without wanting to cry? This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. I don't think there's a single kill, although thank God there's only 3, because in this kind of setting, it's not for me. I can't do more than what we got. But each one of these kills in their own right is very fucking sad. It's very sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, of course, the grandfather's dog is deeply disturbing and sad because, yes, it was trapped, but at the same time, we see this as it kind of like plays out again with Indy. It's the sense of loyalty, right? It stayed loyal to its owner. It stayed there. And it reminds me of the famous episode from Futurama, if you know, you know, Fry's dog, that I just...
Panucci's Pizza.
Thank you. You get it. When I can't do it. That episode scarred most of my childhood and me growing up. And then I had to relive this again. Get out of here. Too much. It's too much.
It is dastardly. Absolutely diabolical. I didn't really care if Todd made it. And I feel badly about that because obviously he's suffering tremendously. But also, I was here for Indy. I did enjoy the reveal of Todd going, though. And we see his final breath. And then he turns around and sees himself. But I need to know if anyone else had the same experience that I did. We all remember the scene where Indy was trapped in the basement. Mm-hmm. And when Todd opens the door, Indy's behind the door covered in mud.
Yeah.
And he gets him in the tub and he says he smells like death.
Yeah.
I was in the theater, my throat just completely swollen and caught, thinking, oh my fucking God, the dog's a ghost now. I was so fucking scared that this dog was already dead. Ah.
Yeah, I don't know if I had that exact same feeling of the dog was dead. I definitely, like, at that point in the film, I actually was just still trying to figure out everything that was actually happening in this movie. So it was, I don't know.
The second time around is when it clicked to me that he smelled like death because that mud, the entity that it encountered was death. But the first time around, I didn't clock that. So I was, same as you, Chris, I was like, fuck me. Please do not tell me that this happened right now. I will lose it in this movie theater at Tamiami AMC. Okay? I can't do this. I cannot do this.
Yeah, I didn't know if the dog was like slowly getting possessed at that point in time or what the hell was going to happen. It was very interesting for sure.
But I just have to comment. I mentioned before the cinematography in this movie is great, but like that camera work though, because I feel like most people get it easy where you're at eye level or like a little bit higher, or you're kind of far off. And we are like 2 feet from the ground, 3 feet from the ground at most. And we're getting every angle. We're flipping back and forth. We're dog's point of view or looking directly into the dog's face. We're staring off into the distance, but like we have to do it effectively. If something kind of like moves in the frame way off in another room, you have to be at just the right angle for it to not look cheesy. And they somehow did it. And I know there's other things that make this film beautiful, but like the way that they were able to get the positions of the camera, the right angles in this camera, like how do you do that? That's just skill.
It's honestly such a feat. And when you again see what they went through making this film, I wish I could find the featurette. I haven't been able to find it online. Hopefully this comes out for a physical release or digital release so that we can just own it and own that featurette as well. But man, I'm also thinking about in conjunction with how they frame the camera to assume Indy's POV and how he sees the world. Mm-hmm. It's also what this movie does with its lighting and its shadows. Mm-hmm. Because again, dogs look into a dark corner and they're barking. And you're like, what the fuck is going on over there, man? But I'm thinking about specifically the shot where Todd and Indy arrive at the grandfather's property. Todd is out of the car. Indy turns around. He sees a dark, shadowy figure cloaked in red taillights. Tell me that is not fucking insane to see. And then, oh, you poor little baby. You also realize he can't even see all those colors.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah, the lighting in the atmosphere is super good because you're often unaware whether you saw something. It just fits the dog's limited understanding of everything that's going on. So it really plays into it well. But okay, the sound design in this movie, which I mentioned before, was, I don't know, it may very well be the film's strongest technical achievement because the off-screen noises, the distant thumps, the subtle growls, those ambient creaks are emphasized over the dialogue. it really mirrors how a dog might process danger, right? The restraint with the sound is very key to the success of this movie. The sound becomes the scare engine in this movie. It's not music spikes. It's not jump scare cues. It's just this really creepy sound design that just was just persistent, and it just kept going. It was just determined throughout this entire film. And I think without the sound in this movie, I mean, cinematography, yes, but without the sound, fuck, man, that shit really added to it.
I agree. I think now that I watched it, but like with headphones in and like just a solo room, you really feel that like in your shoulders and like behind the neck. It's just very creepy. So I'm with you on that one. There's a lot of technical elements here that I think are incredible. We keep talking about cinematography. There's some incredible shots here that I think back on often, like them in the forest, like that graveyard. And it's like this soft light where you just see a figure in the background and you're curious, like, what the fuck is that? I think also just the way that they made things happen in this home, that rain, you could tell me that it was a monsoon out there and I would believe you. And it was just a couple of hoses just coming out of the roof. Like, it worked, man. I think that it was really cool what they were able to achieve on such a small budget that, like you said at the beginning, Chris, it just makes you feel like, damn, I love these indie projects. People are making it work. They're finding a way to tell these stories no matter what. They're not letting the budget limit them. And I think that that's really cool.
Well, Chris, I know you mentioned the lighting and the shadow work in this movie, and I think there's a lot of really great scenes, and I'm sure we're going to start talking through a lot of them because I think there's a lot of really great scenes. But before we jump into some of the more elaborate ones, there was a small one where we got the Nosferatu fucking shadow hand going across the room, which I thought was absolutely fucking great to have in this movie.
Yeah, I was waiting for something to pop out and say, I am an appetite, nothing more. It was so fucking good. But that goddamn hand, man, that hand needed to chill. The hand itself was a paid actor. But I was also thinking about, honestly, one of my favorite scenes. It just goes into exactly what I meant earlier with you just feel such anxiety watching Indy do his thing. And I'm thinking about Indy going behind that wardrobe, sniffing, smelling Bandit's bandana, which I don't fucking know how. I guess it's just an extra bandana, but clearly had a scent. And he sniffs his way into little glimpses of the past and the spooky shit that's happening. But seeing what this entity looked like in such a way that he's just like panicking and scrambling to get backwards out of the room, that was a moment where in the theater, I thought, if this fucking thing tips over on top of this dog, I'm walking out right now. He's just sniffing around. He's just being a dog. But my little brain was just like, oh my God, I see danger. I see peril, even if it's just furniture.
There's reason I feel like, the tension is effective enough to make it seem like furniture's danger here. So I respect that. I think my favorite scene is my least favorite scene because it was so uncomfortable. And it was also really good for providing context by showing and not telling. We have some scenes with Todd where, we're in the hospital and we're hearing about an experimental treatment that he just doesn't qualify anymore for because he's too far along. But when he comes home and he's got the wrapping around his, I don't know, the inside of your elbow, whatever that's called, from where he had an IV in there. That whole scene was so uncomfortable and I really did not enjoy it. But that moment where that quick flash with that, just kind of revealing this is what he's going through and this is why he's feeling so horrible and is pushing him away. Poor little dude, right? He just wants to be there to comfort, but he's getting pushed away because this dude is drained. He feels horrible. He is medicated, probably out of his eyeballs, and he just absolutely feels like trash. And so this is that moment I think you mentioned earlier that you push a dog away, or you get angry at them, you get a little bit frustrated. This is something where like I've been through this myself. If you're dealing with any sort of chronic illness, you have those moments where like, I'm sorry, I can't take you for a walk today, or I can't go play outside. I just don't have it in me right now. His reaction is, of course, much more aggressive because he's going through something very extreme. But it's a really good example of just showing us a quick thing and telling us so much with a glimpse. And then that whole scene, of course, tells us a lot, but it is so miserable to make it through that scene that it's hard to say it's my favorite.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mac. And I wanted to get into this a little bit because Sean and I were just talking about in the Frozen episode.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's a monologue from a character. It's not truly a monologue, but she is just going on and on and on about how she's going to get stuck up there and her dog is not going to understand. Her dog is going to be in her home, looking at the door, thinking, oh my God, I'm abandoned. And the dog is never going to understand. And then it's going to starve to death and no one's going to take care of the dog. And the guy with her is like, they're going to hear the dog barking. They're going to bust down the door. The dog is going to be fine. You're going to be fine too. Don't worry. But Sean and I were going back and forth discussing the reality of a dog confronting and existing in this new normal without being able to reconcile that or really understand what happened. And being stuck in that feeling is just honestly terrible. And you see this happen with Indy.
Yeah.
Indy is coming from a place of what seems to be concern. He's checking in on Todd. You can hear these noises. And he has no way of understanding what the fuck is up on Todd's arm. He just sees something.
Yeah.
And he's concerned about the shadow of death that is emanating from that. And he doesn't understand. He doesn't fucking know. So take that and draw a straight line then to the end of the movie where we as an audience get some kind of closure because Todd is acknowledging that he's a good dog and he can't save him. But Indy still doesn't know that.
Yeah. It's so like heartbreaking. And yeah, to literally come off of Frozen where we were just like conversing of the possibilities of just that one scene, putting that like that moment in our minds to then having to like for more or less live that moment in this whole movie. Like it's just, I don't know how we could have unintentionally teed this fucking double feature up for us because that was just completely fucked up.
What a double feature. Okay, this is what it sounds like to me. I am just like in awe of this film, especially when it comes to something like this, like what we're talking about exactly. How do you not empathize with this animal? How do you not empathize with that sentiment of not
people
fully
that do dog fighting?
Yeah,
those are the people that don't give a fuck.
The worst pieces of garbage on this planet, honestly. But it's just like insane to me because really just try your best to put yourself in a situation where you cannot fully comprehend what is happening to someone that you love unconditionally. You want to save them. You want to be with them forever. And you're not quite comprehending why it is that they're not feeling well, why they're behaving this way. And we know because we're humans and we are seeing this also. We're seeing both perspectives, but I just can't imagine. And both like young children and like animals that aren't really exposed to the darkness and the sad realities of life and sickness and the lack of control that we have when it comes to all of that, right? And our, I guess, for lack of a better word, impending doom. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that that's really hard to grapple with. And this ending, although it's extremely hard for me to talk about without like crying, it is my favorite scene because I think it really comes down to this idea that we've been watching this presence of death, this, again, impending doom that Todd is going to have to accept one way or another towards the end of the road. It eats away at him. It makes him worse. It makes him like irritable and mean and all of these things that, I mean, are happening to people that are dealing with something so devastating as whatever it is that he has. We don't know very clearly if it's cancer or what, but it's clearly something that is something that he can't come back from. And at the very end, when we see death just like dragging him in, right? We even get a little bit of that moment. I realized it in the second watch through that when he's pounding his head towards the door of the basement, that was like death really just calling him, forcing him down there, you know? When I see all that towards the end, when he's just like making sure that his dog knows, please keep living. Don't worry about me. Like, I want you to keep going. God, it's just heartbreaking. Beautiful, but heartbreaking nonetheless.
Yeah. And even to the point of Indy having to make the choice to like stay or go, there was still that choice afterwards. There was still that hesitation of what Indy felt like he should do in that moment, which was just crazy, just absolutely crazy. But okay, there's a couple of really great scenes that I feel like we haven't touched on yet. And I think this was either right before the scene you were describing, Mac. I think it was right before. And it's the scene where Todd is sitting on the bed after getting bad news about him being sick, and how they're able to keep the shot of Indy reacting to what's happening while still getting Todd's reflection in the old TV screen was just very, very smart. And it was very cool to see. It was very like you're just getting everything somehow in that one scene. So I thought that was super effective. But the whole like scene, that whole sequence where Indy appears to like have that fucked up like scary dream where he ends up just waking up on the floor, and then the chilling like closest thing to a jump scare that you would get in this movie with the crawling up the basement stairs, and that whole dream sequence just was fucked up. And then he goes under the bed and he's dragged by Todd. Like that was another little pop type thing that happened. That whole sequence of things of Indy like hearing the noises, going down to the stairs, having the fucking crawl up the stairs that you would see in any fun fucking haunted house movie that would just really give you the shivers, to wake up like it was a bad dream, then start hearing something, go get dragged by your owner as another pop out type jump scare thing. It's just unnerving. The whole thing was unnerving. So those were like some really super well done, effective scenes. I don't know if that little thing at the end of the movie in the theaters went over that scene. I would love to see how that scene was made.
I gotta say though, this had such a Sixth Sense kind of moment when we clearly see full frame another dog walking up the stairs. Like I was not expecting to see anything that didn't look ghoulish or ghost-like. But when we see this beautiful golden retriever just slowly walking up and then running up the stairs, and then it's like, all right, where did he go? That like actually caught me off guard. That was super effective.
I see dead doggos.
Yeah.
And how brilliant that it even like looked at him at one moment like, you coming or what?
Yeah, the dogs have that sense. They have that sense. Man, I told you one of my dogs that wouldn't go in that hallway at that house we stayed at. They just would not go in that hallway. You couldn't drag them in there.
Maybe it just smelled gross. Maybe he's like, nah, it smells horrible in there. I'm not going in there.
Who knows?
I mean, we've kind of danced around a little bit, but like I read some stuff online. People had a reaction to watching this movie where they thought Todd just suffered from addiction.
I thought that at first too.
It doesn't add up though the further you go along in the movie,
Yeah.
right? Like I think it's pretty clear we're supposed to be leaning more towards something cancerous or another sort of lung-based disease. And I know things you've mentioned that like the shadow creature is supposed to be death. And for me, it almost screamed that the shadowy creature thing is this disease. And so anytime it's showing up in frame, it's his disease rearing its head. And the dog is like aware of it and has to deal with it, even though he doesn't know exactly what's going on. But in terms of the whole supernatural thing, I 100% thought this whole time that like his grandfather was going to be a brutal ghost and show up and have been a dog abuser and do miserable things, or possess Todd and he was going to do miserable things. But for this ghoulish tar man to show up and have been a death or the effect of the disease or whatever it is so much deeper and so much more effective. And every time Todd would spit up blood, it was like so disgusting. But like to have that combined with
on Indy too,
covered in tar. Oh my gosh. That's what I want to know. How did they do that and not freak the dog out?
Oh my gosh. That was bad.
Just a real good dog.
It was that, and then mixed with the scene right after where like he was dry but still had blood stains on his fur. You know what I mean? Like, oof, gross. But I agree with you, Mac. I think the one thing that I am still trying to wrap my head around is, now that we have this whole story and we kind of like have an idea of what this is all about, the one thing that I haven't fully pieced together, I guess, is the relations to the grandfather, right? Because obviously he died in the house, but are they implying that they had the same disease? Are they implying that something else happened? It's just very strange to me that they would have the same type of cancerous disease, or if this was something different. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It is very interesting.
To me, it screamed like that habit of animals to crawl into a private place when they know they're about to go.
Yeah.
Like birds, when you see them just totally slow, laying on the ground, sitting down, doing their thing, you might think, oh, that's cute. And then you realize it's because they're trying to get away from the other birds and they're trying to be alone, and other animals do that. And it kind of screamed like that feeling for me, where they're trying to go off away from everybody else, avoiding his sister, and just hole up and die. And they don't know why. They don't know what it is. They feel this calling, but that's what it screamed to me, at least.
1,000%. I'm with you, Mac. That is absolutely what it read to me as well. It was just the little bits and moments with the sister, with the hunter neighbor guy, that they're like, why would you go there? This guy died there. Like, it's clearly not a fun, cozy place to be. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is a movie from a animal's POV. We're talking a bit more of that like animal instincts, right? That curiosity and what they do, those behaviors. And that's a very common behavior for animals to do. Dogs, they just kind of hold and hide up, and just are alone when it's their time to pass. And I think that, to me, it definitely read that both of them have this like maybe genetic disorder or cancer, and we know that cancer can definitely be hereditary. So maybe they have some kind of cancer or sickness, disease that took their lives, So that's kind of what it read to me, especially at the beginning, like that first scene, which is very intense. I think it can read as addiction maybe, but it definitely kind of translates later on that it's something like a little more, I guess, different.
100%. It absolutely felt that way. Like, this is Todd taking himself out to the pasture and wanting to die alone. But I just want to give a little chuckle here, because his grandfather was fucking hilarious, saying he wants to leave his taxidermy to his vegan granddaughter. Fucking great. The guy's very funny.
Thanks a lot.
A little bit of a dick that he leaves his grandson everything else, but it was very, very funny.
That was ridiculous for sure. But yeah, what else is there to say about any of the characters in this movie? Because really it is really just all about Indy, and all I can say is get this fucking dog an Oscar. You know what I mean? If nothing else, get this fucking dog an Oscar. Let's make history. All right? It should be Best Actor, Indy.
Let's do it, man, because I heard a lot about that dog from that movie Anatomy of a Fall. I don't know if y'all saw it. It was like this foreign film drama. They talked a lot about that dog. Where is that same energy for Indy? I'm going to need it. An untrained dog emoting without actually emoting. It's incredible.
Right.
I mentioned earlier that I have a few things that are like the worst part of this movie. For sure, Mac. The biggest one was the most difficult one to watch. And it's essential in the movie. And it serves its point. It's good. But it's Todd grabbing Indy's head and saying, I said, get the fuck out of here. That was really tough. But I do want to be a little bit of a pest, because I think for me, the one thing that pulled me out of this movie visually, and it's happened every single time that I've seen it, it's when Indy is running out of the house, breaks through the glass, and it's terribly CGI'd glass. It's that one moment. I'm like, oh, one of these things is not like the other. And the entity already like doesn't look really great, but it is what it is, right? It's a supernatural entity, but the glass in particular really just irked me.
It was kind of funny a little bit. It was like action movie-ish when he hopped through that glass. And I think I'm bothered not by the execution or anything, but the scene where Indy breaks free and heads off into the woods and ends up in some sort of trap or snare or whatever it was that was happening. It was so dark and I could barely see anything. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that are like, basically there's nothing but blackness, and like a little bit of a shadow lets you know that there's some light somewhere, but like it's really unclear who sets him free. It's really unclear if that trap is around his neck, if he's just being held back by like a chain. I don't know what's going on. And so I think I don't necessarily want to see him in a trap. I wish that whole scene hadn't happened, but that's my one gripe, I think, is we're getting a little bit Stranger Things season 1 here, where some of the scenes are just so dark that you can't make out too much. And maybe that's good. Maybe that's a good choice. But for me, it was kind of like, I turned the brightness up. I literally was like, oh, I must have it too low. I can't see what's going on. And I turned it up. And I'm like, oh no, there's just nothing. There's no data.
That's interesting. I had zero issues seeing what was happening in that scene.
It wasn't the only scene. And so that darkness complaint is across many scenes in the film. But that was just one example to me, at least, of, in my memory, what bothered me, because the hard to watch scenes, they're hard to watch and you don't want to watch them, but it's part of the story. But like when you're in some of the stuff and you're kind of like, what the heck is happening? Not due to the angle, not due to the lighting, but literally due to the lack of any information, like visually, that's when I had trouble.
Yeah, I feel like for me, the worst part of this movie is unfortunately just the best part of this movie. And I think the fact that it's just centered around Indy, I think it's the fact that it's purely from the dog's perspective, the way the story unfolds, it's truly heartbreaking. It's emotionally taxing. It serves as both the best and worst part because it makes the film unique, really good, but also I hated living in it. I absolutely hated living in it. So it is the worst part. It just is.
I'm with you there. I think that the worst part has to be how emotionally wrecked you're going to be after watching it. That's for goddamn sure. And I'll probably tie that with how underappreciated the movie is too. I feel like, again, it really didn't get enough theater time, discussion, maybe even. Like, I feel like I need to talk about this movie more. I think it's really unique. But then I also feel like I'm a harbinger of sadness if I tell people to watch this movie completely, right? It's like what we're kind of doing here. It's like, hey, watch it. Just be careful. And that being said, as far as would I watch this again and sob uncontrollably again? Shockingly, yes. I feel like maybe this time around, because both times I've watched this by myself, which is probably a bad idea on both accounts, next time I'd probably want to watch this with a couple more people. So that way maybe it helps me not feel like crying so much. Could be good. I just feel like maybe they'll make me feel like, okay, Bianca, keep it together because you can't be sobbing with all your friends around. It might help.
Oh man, it's a tough one because this like I said it a couple times in this episode already. This was a great film that I really don't want to be fetching again. You know what I mean? I respect it. I think it was a really good, unique horror film. I do think it's worth a rewatch. I think there's more to get out of the film. I just don't know if I can do it. I don't even know if I have the desire to.
I've watched this so many times. I will continue to watch this. Now, I was actually just even considering at the beginning of the movie what we see and how Indy just responds to this whole scene and you know what's going to happen at the end of it. This movie gets so much better every single time you watch it. And it hurts, don't get me wrong, but it's the good kind of hurt that we need to pay attention to.
I think it's a little too close to home for stuff in my own family. So it's definitely not something I'm looking forward to watching again.
Completely fair. But I can't wait to see how our audience felt about this movie. I know this is one that was in high demand from our listeners. But for now, there you have it, folks. Good Boy from 2025 has earned a universal slash. We certainly had a robust discussion here, but it doesn't end here by any means.
If you want to find out what's lurking in the basement of this old creaky episode and go further than this episode, consider supporting the show by visiting patreon.com/hackerslash. This is where you can enjoy even more of the show, including bonus content, extended episodes, movie nominations, and live shows.
We'll see you next time, folks. And remember, mankind has left the caves, but the darkness haunts us still.
What? Too scary for you?